Hello, welcome to the news bulletin from SABA satellite channel live from Marib. Coming up on the program. President Al-Alimi calls for stronger international action against Iran's regional proxies. Presidential Council sets out firm measures to counter Houthi escalation. And Foreign Minister Dr. Afrah Azzouba discusses maritime security and Houthi threats with French and Australian ambassadors. Welcome back. President of the Presidential Leadership Council, Dr. Rashad Al-Alimi, has called for a stronger international approach to Iranian interventions in the region, urging simultaneous pressure on Tehran and its armed networks, alongside efforts to cut their funding and arms supplies and strengthen the capacity of legitimate state institutions. Speaking during a meeting with German Defense Ministry Secretary General Nils Polter, Al-Alimi said shifts in the international position toward Iran represent an opportunity to build a more sustainable framework for regional security. He said Yemen offers a clear example of the dangers posed by armed groups operating outside state authority, warning that such groups can evolve from an internal threat into a cross-border danger affecting ports, maritime routes, and international trade. Al-Alimi pointed to recent Houthi attacks on cities, ports, and civilian infrastructure, including Mocha and Marib, saying they reflect an attempt to revive a policy of coercion and test the state's resolve. The president also called for stronger international action against arms smuggling networks and entities financing and supplying the Houthis, as well as greater support for Yemen's capacity to protect the Red Sea, Bab al-Mandab, and its sovereign ports. He stressed that lasting maritime security cannot rely on international naval deployments alone, but requires a strong Yemeni state capable of protecting its coastline and territorial waters. In its latest meeting, the Presidential Leadership Council reviewed military, security, and economic developments and approved a series of measures aimed at strengthening readiness, protecting civilians and vital facilities, and cutting off sources of smuggling and terrorist financing. Here are the key decisions and measures from the meeting. In a related context, Saudi Arabia and France have reaffirmed their support for Yemen's Presidential Leadership Council and for United Nations efforts to reach a comprehensive resolution to the country's crisis. In a joint statement issued following Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman's visit to France and his meeting with President Emmanuel Macron, the two countries said Houthi provocative actions are worsening the humanitarian suffering of the Yemeni people. The statement also condemned Houthi attacks on civilian infrastructure and vital facilities in Saudi Arabia, as well as attacks on commercial shipping. The two leaders also underscored their shared vision for strengthened stability in the Middle East on the basis of respect for state sovereignty and international law. Member of the Presidential Leadership Council, Dr. Abdullah Al-Alimi, has discussed Yemen's political, security and economic developments with French Ambassador to Yemen, Catherine Kerm-Kamoun, with a focus on the recent Houthi escalation and international support for state institutions. During their meeting, Al-Alimi highlighted recent Houthi missile and drone attacks on the cities of Muka and Marib, saying they pose direct threats to ports, civilian facilities, displacement camps, and maritime routes, while worsening Yemen's humanitarian and economic situation. Al-Alimi stressed the need for a firmer international position to address the sources of threat and strengthen Yemen's ability to protect its territory, waters, and citizens' interests. On her part, Ambassador Kerm-Kamoun reaffirmed France's support for the Presidential Leadership Council and the Yemeni government, as well as efforts to strengthen bilateral cooperation and regional and international efforts to promote security and stability. Member of the Presidential Leadership Council, Lieutenant General Tariq Saleh, has described the Hodeidah, Tehama and Western Coastal fronts as key arenas in the national confrontation with the Houthi militia, calling for greater political, military and social unity. Addressing local officials, community figures, religious scholars and youth from Hodeidah via video link, Saleh said forces on the western coast, including ground, naval and drone units, are increasingly prepared and coordinated. He stressed that the various formations must operate as one front against the Houthi militias. Saleh affirmed that the militia imposes repression and levies on residents of Tehama and urged community leaders to reassure citizens that state forces seek to end those practices. He also warned that continued Houthi access to Hodeidah's port, which is being used to bring in weapons and military technology, poses a continuing threat to maritime security. He highlighted the humanitarian impact of attacks along the coast, including casualties among farmers and damage to the livelihoods of fishermen, traders and port workers. Saleh also called for unity across political, social and military forces and urged families to prevent the recruitment of children, stressing that children belong in schools, not battlefields. Transport Minister Mohsen Al-Omari has called for greater investment in young Yemeni professionals as a key to developing the country's ports and maritime sector. Addressing the third regional forum of the Oasis platform held in Amman under the theme Sustainable Maritime Trade and Smart Ports, Al-Omari said sustainable development in the port sector depends on qualified young professionals capable of managing vital facilities efficiently. The minister also highlighted the wider geopolitical significance of maritime security, citing Houthi attacks on international shipping routes in the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea, as well as attacks on vital facilities in Marib and Muka. He said recent developments demonstrate the growing link between maritime security, global trade, and regional stability. Foreign Minister Dr. Afrah Al-Zuba has discussed bilateral relations and regional developments with French Ambassador to Yemen, Catherine Kerm-Kamoun, emphasizing the importance of stronger coordination between the two countries. Al-Zuba highlighted France's active role in the UN Security Council and its support for the Presidential Leadership Council and the Yemeni government. She briefed the ambassador on the continuing Houthi escalation, including attacks on Muka port and areas along the western coast, as well as ongoing threats in the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandeb. The minister said the repercussions of these attacks now extend beyond Yemen, affecting regional security, international interests, maritime safety, and global trade. She stressed that addressing the Houthi threat sustainably requires moving beyond containing its consequences to tackling its sources, including strengthening state institutions, restoring state sovereignty, and ensuring exclusive state control over weapons and sovereign decisions. The French ambassador reaffirmed France's support for the Presidential Leadership Council and government, condemned Houthi maritime escalation and attacks targeting Yemen and Saudi Arabia, and reiterated France's opposition to Iranian support for the Houthis. In another meeting, Dr. Afrah Al-Zuba has discussed bilateral relations and developments in Yemen and the region with Australia's non-resident ambassador to Yemen, Miles Armtake. Al-Zuba briefed the Australian ambassador on the ongoing Houthi escalation, warning that threats in the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandab increasingly affect regional security and international interests. She stressed that sustainable maritime security requires empowering the Yemeni state to fulfill its sovereign responsibilities and protect its coastline and territorial waters, thereby helping safeguard international navigation and trade. Az-Zuba welcomed Australia's support for the Yemeni government and state institutions and commended Canberra's designation of the Houthis as a terrorist organization. Armtag reaffirmed Australia's continued support for Yemen and its government, saying the designation reflects Australia's established principles toward terrorist groups. Also in the diplomatic file, Foreign Minister Dr. Afrah Az-Zuba has received a copy of the credentials of the South Korea's newly appointed ambassador to Yemen, Jae-Hoon Chung. Az-Zuba welcomed the ambassador and praised the long-standing relations between Yemen and South Korea and expressed the Yemeni government's interest in expanding bilateral cooperation across various fields. For his part, Ambassador Chung expressed his pleasure at beginning his diplomatic mission in Yemen and reaffirmed South Korea's commitment to further developing bilateral relations between the two countries in various areas. Health Minister Dr. Qasim Bahaibeh has chaired a joint meeting with the World Health Organization in Aden to review Yemen's current epidemiological situation and strengthen their national response to disease outbreaks. The meeting examined measures to address acute watery diarrhea, alongside the epidemiological situation and malaria and dengue fever, and ongoing interventions to limit their spread. Officials also reviewed health sector readiness, response plans, priority needs, and challenges with a focus on directing resources toward the most affected areas. The meeting further assessed the implementation of the malaria control project funded by the King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center, including activities, results, lessons learned, and measures to sustain and expand its impact. Bahaibeh stressed the need to strengthen disease surveillance and early warning systems and improve the speed of outbreak response through closer coordination between the ministry, local health authorities, and international partners. In Aden, Governor Abdurrahman Sheikh has reviewed the final arrangements for completing a project to drill 10 water wells in the city, supported by Kuwait's Direct Aid Association as part of efforts to strengthen the local water supply system. During a meeting with representatives of the Kuwaiti Association and officials from Aden's Labor, Water and Sanitation Corporation, Sheikh reviewed progress on the project and remaining procedures needed to bring the wells into operation. The governor praised Kuwait's continued support for Aden's water sector and other essential services, saying the project will provide additional water sources and help improve the stability of services for residents. Representatives of Direct Aid Association reaffirmed their commitment to supporting humanitarian and development projects in Aden and completing the necessary procedures according to the agreed plans. Deputy Foreign Minister Mustafa Nu'man has received the credentials of Noura Hamlaji as the new UNDP resident representative in Yemen. Nu'man welcomed Hamlaji and praised UNDP's role in supporting the Yemeni government, strengthening state institutions, and implementing development projects. He stressed the importance of closer coordination to align the program's interventions with government priorities and citizens' needs, particularly projects with direct and sustainable impact. The talks also addressed the continuing Houthi escalation and its effects on citizens, as well as its economic, humanitarian, and service-related repercussions. Hamlaji reviewed UNDP's recent activities and projects planned for 2027, reaffirming the program's commitment to continued cooperation with the Yemeni government and support for recovery, institution building, development, and stability. Deputy Minister of Planning and International Cooperation Dr. Nizar Basuhaib has discussed child malnutrition and food and nutrition security with UNICEF's head of nutrition in Yemen, Joseph Abi. The talks in Aden reviewed the causes of malnutrition and measures to strengthen prevention and treatment, alongside efforts to improve coordination and direct nutrition interventions toward the most vulnerable communities. The meeting addressed urgent nutrition interventions in Marib and Muka amid the humanitarian consequences of the Houthi attacks, as well as the possibility of developing future UNICEF programs in Socotra. UNICEF reaffirmed its continued support for government efforts, including preventive and therapeutic nutrition programs and emergency interventions in affected areas. In Taiz, Governor Nabil Shamsan has discussed the humanitarian and security situation in the governorate with the head of OCHA's office in Taiz, Santos Rico, focusing on efforts to facilitate the work of international organizations. Shamsan said the performance of security agencies has improved, particularly following the establishment of a unified operations room, strengthening their ability to prevent criminal activities. He reaffirmed the local authorities' commitment to providing a safe and suitable environment for international organizations to carry out humanitarian and development projects across the governorate. Taiz Police Chief Brigadier General Mansour Al-Akhali said security agencies are operating under unified plans to protect citizens and humanitarian organizations, with coordination through the Joint Operations Room and with security authorities in other governorates and the armed forces. For his part, the UN official reviewed planned humanitarian and development interventions and praised the improved security performance and efforts to facilitate humanitarian operations in Taiz. In Marib, health sector is receiving additional medical support from the International Committee of the Red Cross as a specialized team begins an assessment of critical medical and technical needs across key hospitals in the governorate. Marib Deputy Governor Dr. Abdurrabbi Miftah met with the ICRC medical team, led by Public Health Deputy Coordinator Kosai Command, to review the pressure facing the health sector and identify priority areas for support. The team will assess needs in emergency, surgery, inpatient and intensive care departments at Marib General Hospital, the Military Hospital and Kara General Hospital. It will also provide training for medical staff and deliver direct medical services to patients and the injured. Miftah praised the ICRC's humanitarian interventions in Marib, while stressing the importance of strengthening health facilities' capacity to respond to growing demand. That's all for tonight. Thank you for watching and have a good time.